The crystalline towers of Zephyria gleamed under their twin suns, casting rainbow reflections across the peaceful city below. Ambassador Kethare adjusted her gossamer wings as she floated gracefully through the corridors of the Galactic Council chambers. Her people, the Zephyrians, had built their civilization on harmony and diplomacy. Violence was as foreign to them as breathing water would be to a land dweller. Today felt different, though. The emergency session had been called with unprecedented urgency, and even the usually calm council members seemed agitated. Kethare's delicate features showed concern as she entered the Grand Assembly Hall, where representatives from dozens of species had gathered. The hall itself was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate the diverse needs of the galaxy's peaceful races. Aquatic Neptunians floated in their water-filled observation pods, while the gaseous ethereals manifested as shimmering clouds of light. The plant-like Verdians swayed gently in their soil beds, and the insectoid chitinoids clicked their mandibles nervously. High Counselor Vexen, an elderly Luminian whose bioluminescent skin flickered with anxiety, called the session to order. His voice carried through the chamber's translation systems, converting his light pattern language into forms each species could understand. Fellow beings of peace, Vexen began, his glow dimming with worry, we face a crisis unlike any in our recorded history. The Dominion has broken the 1,000-year peace treaty. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. The Dominion was a coalition of aggressive species that had been contained beyond the neutral zone for centuries. They were everything the Council species were not: violent, expansionist, and utterly without mercy. Kethare felt her wings tremble. The Zephyrians had no military to speak of. Their entire society was built around art, philosophy, and peaceful coexistence. The concept of warfare was so alien to them that they didn't even have words for many military terms. How bad is it? Asked Ambassador Thalam, a massive but gentle titan whose rocky exterior belied his kind nature. Despite their imposing size, the titans were pacifists who used their strength only for construction and protection. Vexen's skin flashed deep crimson, the Luminian equivalent of profound distress. 3 systems have already fallen. The Dominion's fleets are advancing on multiple fronts. They're not taking prisoners. The translation of that last statement caused universal horror. The concept of not taking prisoners was incomprehensible to most Council species, who had evolved past such barbarism millennia ago. Surely this is a misunderstanding, chirped Elder Pippi, a small, bird-like avian whose feathers ruffled with distress. Perhaps they're just relocating populations? I wish that were true, Vexen replied, his bioluminescence now pulsing in slow, mournful patterns. We have recordings from the final transmissions of Kepler 442b. The Dominion forces showed no quarter. They turned the entire planet into a mining operation within days. The population was eliminated as an inefficiency. The word hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Inefficiency. To the Council races, every life was precious, every individual a unique contribution to the cosmic tapestry. The idea that an entire civilization could be dismissed as inefficient was more than horrifying, it was completely incomprehensible. Ambassador Kethare found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. What are our options? The Peace Fleet? The Peace Fleet was the Council's token military force, designed primarily for disaster relief and ceremonial purposes. Its ships were equipped with non-lethal restraint systems and defensive shields, built by civilizations that had forgotten how to wage war. The Peace Fleet engaged the Dominion at the Centauri Junction, Vexen reported, his glow now barely visible. Of our 200 vessels, only 12 escaped. The Dominion's weapons, they're designed purely for destruction. Our shields, built to deflect debris and radiation, were useless against deliberate violence. The chamber fell silent except for the various biological sounds of dozens of species trying to process this information. The aquatic Neptunian sonar clicks became rapid and distressed. The Verdian's leaves rustled like wine through a worried forest. The ethereals flickered between frequencies of visible light as their collective consciousness struggled with the concept. We need allies, declared Commander Zestal of the militant Urgak species. They were one of the few council members who still maintained any military tradition, though even their warriors were trained primarily for defensive actions. We cannot face the Dominion alone. But, who? Asked Kethare. The Altarian Republic is too distant. The Celestial Union is in hibernation season. The Nordic Collective has never answered our communications. What about the fringe territories? Suggested Thalum. There are species out there beyond our normal diplomatic reach. Perhaps some of them have maintained military capabilities? Vexen's skin brightened slightly with what might have been hope. I have been researching this possibility. There are indeed several species in the outer territories that our explorers have encountered. Most seemed primitive, but some showed concerning levels of technological development combined with aggressive tendencies. Concerning to us, perhaps, Zestel pointed out. But, exactly what we need now. The High Counselor activated the chamber's holographic display system. Three-dimensional star charts appeared in the center of the room, showing the galaxy's spiral arms. The Council's territory was highlighted in peaceful blue, while the advancing red markers of the Dominion crept steadily inward. Here, Vexen indicated a small yellow star system in one of the outer spiral arms. Sol System. Third planet, designation Earth. Our long-range surveys indicated a species calling themselves humans had achieved spaceflight within the last century. They appear to be warlike. Several council members recoiled at the term. Among civilized species, being called warlike was equivalent to being called diseased or insane. How warlike? Asked Elder Pippi, her small voice trembling. According to our cultural analysis probes, they have spent most of their recorded history in various states of conflict with each other. Their entertainment is filled with simulated violence. They have weapons capable of destroying their own planet multiple times over, which they've somehow avoided using. They appear to consider conflict a normal part of existence. The chamber buzzed with disturbed translations as species tried to process this information through their peaceful worldviews. But, surely, Kethare said hopefully, they must have evolved past such things by now? Most species naturally develop beyond violence as they mature. Vexen's skin dimmed again. The latest reports suggest otherwise. They've recently achieved faster-than-light travel and have begun expanding into nearby systems. Every probe we've sent has detected massive military installations. They appear to be preparing for war. Preparing for war with whom? Asked Thalum. Unknown. Perhaps each other. Perhaps us. Perhaps everyone. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. Here was a species that had not only failed to evolve past violence but had actually perfected it while developing advanced technology. To the council races, it was like discovering that somewhere in the galaxy, a civilization had decided to specialize in making diseases more deadly. There are others, Vexen continued, manipulating the star chart. The Kitharan system houses a species called Klingon. No, wait, that's not right. Let me check my files. His skin flickered as he accessed information. The Bra-Kari. They appear to be a warrior culture that considers death in battle the highest honor. Their society is built around combat prowess. More disturbed chittering and clicking filled the chamber. And, here, another star system highlighted, the Volcaran Dominion, not to be confused with our enemy Dominion. These orcs, again, my apologies for the primitive names, appear to be a species that engages in warfare purely for the joy of fighting. They don't seem to have any other cultural pursuits. This is madness, whispered one of the ethereals, its lifeform flickering with distress. How can entire civilizations exist solely for violence? I know it's difficult to understand, Vexen acknowledged. But, perhaps this madness is exactly what we need. If we're to face an enemy that uses violence as a tool, we may need allies who understand violence as an art. Ambassador Kethare felt sick. Her entire worldview was crumbling. The universe she had known was one where rational beings could always find peaceful solutions. The idea that some problems could only be solved through violence was as alien to her as breathing vacuum. But, how do we even communicate with such beings, she asked. What could we possibly offer them in exchange for their help? That, said Vexen, is what we must determine. I propose we send diplomatic missions to each of these species. We'll explain our situation and see if any of them are willing to assist us. And, if they refuse, asked Commander Zestel. Then, we prepare for extinction, Vexen replied with stark honesty. Because without help, we cannot stop the Dominion's advance. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions as various species tried to process this reality. The Verdians' leaves rustled frantically as they shared information through their root networks. The Neptunian sonar communications became so rapid they created a constant hum. The chitinoid's mandibles clicked in complex patterns of distress. Kethare closed her eyes and tried to center herself using ancient Zephyrian meditation techniques. When she opened them again, her resolve had crystallized. I volunteer to lead the mission to the Sol system, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chaos. The chamber fell silent. All attention focused on the delicate Zephyrian ambassador, whose gossamer wings and ethereal beauty made her look more like a piece of living art than a diplomat. Ambassador, Vexen said gently, the humans' planet is what our xenobiologists classify as a Class 12 death world. The gravity is crushing, the atmosphere is corrosive, and the native life forms are universally hostile. It's not an environment any of our species could survive in for long. Then, we'll modify one of our deep space diplomatic vessels, Kethare replied firmly. Create a proper life support environment. If these humans are truly as violent as our reports suggest, they might respect directness more than elaborate diplomatic protocols. I'll accompany you, volunteered Thalum, his massive rocky form shifting as he stood. If we're dealing with aggressive species, you might need protection. As will I, added Commander Zestel. The Urgak still remember the old fighting techniques. If necessary, I can serve as a military advisor. Vexen looked around the chamber at the gathering of peaceful species artists, philosophers, scientists, and dreamers who had never known conflict. Now they were preparing to seek help from the galaxy's most violent inhabitants. Very well, he said finally. Prepare 3 diplomatic missions. 1 to the Sol system, 1 to the Brachari worlds, and 1 to the Orc territories. May the cosmic harmony protect you all. As the session ended and the various species began to disperse, Kethare remained in her seat, staring at the star chart still floating in the center of the chamber. Somewhere out there, in a small yellow star system, lived beings who had turned violence into an art form. Soon, she would have to face them and somehow convince them to fight for strangers they'd never met. The irony wasn't lost on her. The galaxy's most peaceful races were about to learn if their salvation lay in the hands of its most violent inhabitants. 3 days later, the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Echo departed from the Zephyrian homeworld. Its hull had been specially reinforced to survive the harsh conditions of a death world, and its life support systems had been modified to sustain the 3-member diplomatic team during their journey to Sol system. As they entered hyperspace, Kethare wondered if they were making the right choice. But, with the Dominion's forces advancing and no other options available, she knew they had no alternative. They were going to make contact with humanity. And nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest and most powerful warship, watching the blue marble of Earth slowly rotate below them. The vessel was a testament to human engineering, 5 kilometers of armored hull bristling with enough firepower to level a continent. To the Admiral, it represented both humanity's greatest achievement and their greatest fear made manifest. Admiral, came the voice of her aide, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, as he approached with a data pad. We've received another transmission from the outer perimeter stations. Same as before, unknown vessel approaching at sublight speed, broadcasting on peaceful frequencies. Sarah turned from the viewport, her weathered face showing the stress of 5 years commanding Earth's defense fleet. At 52, she had spent most of her life preparing for the day when humanity would encounter alien intelligence. Every scenario the brass had run suggested that first contact would either be an invasion or a trap. How many does that make? She asked. 17 confirmed sightings in the past 6 months, Admiral. All different vessels, all broadcasting peaceful intentions. None responding to our communication attempts. Sarah nodded grimly. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 8 years ago, and what they'd found in nearby star systems had been troubling. Evidence of dead civilizations. Planets that had once supported advanced life but were now nothing more than mining operations. Someone was out there, systematically destroying entire worlds. The Global Defense Initiative had been formed in response to these discoveries. Every nation on Earth had contributed resources to build a fleet capable of defending their homeworld. The assumption had been that whoever was destroying civilizations would eventually come for humanity. "What's the status on this new contact?" Sarah asked. "Different from the others, Admiral. This one is actively trying to communicate. It's broadcasting mathematical sequences, universal constants, even basic pictographs. Our xenolinguistics team thinks they're genuinely trying to establish first contact protocols." Sarah considered this. In all their simulations, a truly peaceful alien contact seemed too good to be true. More likely, it was a scouting mission trying to assess Earth's defenses before an invasion. Where are they now? Just passing Jupiter. At current speed, they'll reach Earth orbit in approximately 18 hours. "Battle stations," Sarah ordered. "I want every ship in the fleet ready for combat. If this is the prelude to an invasion, we'll be prepared." "Yes, Admiral." "Should we intercept them at the edge of the system?" Sarah thought about it. The smart tactical move would be to engage any unknown vessel as far from Earth as possible. But something about this situation felt different. Maybe it was the persistence of the communication attempts, or maybe it was just intuition, but she decided to take a calculated risk. "No. Let them approach Mars orbit, but no closer. I want to see what they do when they realize we're ready for them." 18 hours later, the alien vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel exactly where their calculations had predicted. Sarah watched the tactical display from the Defiance's command bridge as her sensors analyzed the newcomer. "It's beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Webb, and Sarah had to agree. The alien ship looked nothing like human vessels. Where human ships were angular and aggressive, built for war, this vessel flowed like liquid crystal. It seemed to shimmer with its own internal light, and its proportions suggested artistry rather than military function. "Size comparison?" Sarah asked. "Approximately 800 meters long, but it's hard to get exact readings. The hull seems to be some kind of crystalline material that our sensors have trouble penetrating. No obvious weapons signatures." "That doesn't mean anything," Sarah muttered. "Weapons technology could be so advanced we can't recognize it." "Admiral," called out Communications Officer Janet Park, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien vessel." It's in English." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "How is that possible?" "Unknown. The voice sounds artificial, probably some kind of translation system." "Should I put it through?" "Do it." The bridge speakers crackled to life with a voice that was clearly synthetic but somehow conveyed emotion nonetheless. When it spoke, the words were careful and formal, as if chosen with great precision. "Greetings to the human species. I am Ambassador Kethare of the Zephyrian people, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. We come seeking urgent dialogue regarding a matter of mutual survival. Please do not interpret our approach as hostile. We desperately need your assistance." Sarah exchanged glances with her senior staff. In all their first contact scenarios, none had involved aliens asking for help. This could be a trick, warned her tactical officer, Commander Jackson Hayes. "Get us to lower our defenses by appealing to our protective instincts." "Maybe," Sarah replied, "but they said mutual survival. That implies they're offering something in return." She activated the communication system. "Alien vessel, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Force. You are in violation of our system's security perimeter. State your intentions and prepare to be boarded for inspection." There was a pause before the response came, and Sarah could swear she heard what sounded like surprised chittering in the background. "Admiral Chen, we understand your caution. However, I must inform you that our vessel's life support systems are not compatible with human physiology. Aborting would be fatal to both our species. Perhaps we could arrange a neutral meeting? Our long-range scanners detect several space stations in your system that could be modified for diplomatic contact. Sarah frowned. This wasn't matching any of their invasion scenarios. Real invaders wouldn't be concerned about human safety during first contact. What kind of assistance are you seeking? She asked. We are under attack by a hostile force known as the Dominion. They have destroyed multiple civilizations and are advancing toward the core worlds of the Galactic Council. We have exhausted our peaceful options and now seek allies who possess military capabilities. The bridge fell silent. Sarah felt her worldview shifting as the implications sank in. Not only were there multiple alien civilizations out there, but they were engaged in a war large enough to threaten entire sectors of space. How many civilizations are we talking about? She asked. The Galactic Council represents 47 peaceful species across 2,000 star systems. The Dominion consists of 15 aggressive species that have formed an alliance for the purpose of conquest and resource extraction. Sarah did quick math in her head. 2,000 star systems under attack meant billions of potential casualties. If this was real, they were being asked to help in a conflict of unimaginable scale. Commander Hayes, she said quietly, what's our fleet status? 237 combat vessels ready for action, Admiral. The Aurora Squadron is conducting training exercises near Saturn, but they can be recalled within 6 hours. Sarah weighed her options. If this was genuine, Earth might have an opportunity to forge alliances that could benefit humanity for centuries. If it was a trap, they needed to be ready for the worst-case scenario. Alien vessel Kethare, I'm willing to arrange a meeting. But understand that any aggressive action will be met with overwhelming force. We have 200 warships in this system, and every one of them is trained for combat. Another pause, longer this time. Admiral, forgive my confusion, but did you say 200 warships? For a single star system? That's correct. And these vessels are designed specifically for warfare? Sarah wondered why that seemed to surprise them. Of course. What else would warships be designed for? When the response came, the synthetic voice seemed strained. Admiral, most Council species maintain perhaps a dozen defensive vessels per system, primarily for asteroid deflection and emergency response. The concept of dedicating entire fleets to warfare is unfamiliar to us. It was Sarah's turn to be confused. How do you defend your territory without military fleets? We don't. The Galactic Council has maintained peace for over 1,000 years through diplomacy and mutual cooperation. The very concept of maintaining permanent military forces was abandoned millennia ago by most civilized species. Sarah felt her tactical assumptions crumbling. These weren't advanced aliens with superior military technology. They were pacifists who had never learned to fight. Then, how exactly were you planning to resist this Dominion force? That's why we're here, Admiral. We need to learn warfare from species that still practice it. Our research indicated that humans are one of the few spacefaring civilizations that has retained significant military capabilities. The irony hit Sarah like a physical blow. Humanity's greatest shame, their inability to move past war and violence, might be exactly what was needed to save thousands of peaceful worlds. Commander Hayes, she said softly, contact the Aurora Squadron. Have them return to Earth orbit immediately. And get me a direct line to Global Defense Command. I think we need to escalate this. Over the next several hours, the meeting was arranged on Luna Station, one of humanity's largest orbital facilities. The station's environmental systems were modified to create a neutral atmosphere that both species could tolerate with appropriate protective gear. Sarah arrived at the station accompanied by a full diplomatic team, including linguists, xenobiologists, and military strategists. Security was provided by an entire platoon of Space Marines, because even if these aliens were peaceful, Sarah wasn't taking any chances. The alien shuttle that docked with Luna Station was as beautiful as their main vessel, a work of art that seemed to dance rather than fly. When the airlock opened, Sarah got her first look at an extraterrestrial intelligence. Ambassador Kethare was nothing like what human science fiction had imagined. She stood nearly 3 meters tall but was so slender and graceful that she seemed almost weightless. Her skin had a translucent quality that caught and refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. Most striking were her wings, gossamer structures that shifted color as they moved, creating a constantly changing display of rainbow light. Behind her came 2 other aliens who were clearly different species. One was massive and rocky, moving with ponderous strength, while the other looked vaguely insectoid but moved with fluid precision. "Admiral Chen," Kethare said, her voice now coming through a small translation device, "thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I am Ambassador Kethare of the Zephyrian people. My companions are Commander Thalam of the Titans and Commander Zestel of the Urgak." Sarah stepped forward, very aware that this moment would be remembered in history books for as long as humanity existed. "Welcome to Luna Station, Ambassador. I have to admit, this isn't how we expected first contact to go." "Nor we," Kethare replied, and Sarah could hear what sounded like sadness in the translated voice. "In a perfect galaxy, our peoples would have met under peaceful circumstances, to share knowledge and culture. Instead, we come as refugees seeking aid from strangers. Tell me about this dominion," Sarah said as they moved toward the conference room that had been prepared. As they walked, Kethare began to explain. The picture she painted was horrifying, an alliance of aggressive species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of conquest. They didn't just defeat enemies, they eliminated them entirely, turning inhabited worlds into resource extraction sites. "How long do we have?" Sarah asked as they settled around the conference table. "At their current rate of advance, they will reach the core council worlds within 2 years, Thalam rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. "My people's homeworld of Titan Prime is directly in their path. We estimate 6 months before they arrive there." Sarah looked at her staff. General Morrison, her chief strategic advisor, was taking rapid notes. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes, the xenobiologist, was clearly fascinated by their visitors but trying to stay focused on the tactical situation. "What kind of opposition are they facing?" asked General Morrison. "The Peace Fleet managed to delay them at 3 major engagement sites," Zestel clicked through his translator, "but our vessels were not designed for combat against dedicated military forces. We lack both the weapons and the tactical knowledge to mount an effective resistance." "But you do have numbers," Sarah pointed out. 2,000 systems worth of industrial capacity and resources." "Yes," Kethare confirmed. "What we lack is the knowledge of how to use those resources for warfare. Our civilizations have spent thousands of years perfecting art, science, and philosophy. We know how to create beauty and advance knowledge. We have no idea how to create effective weapons or military strategies." Sarah sat back in her chair, the magnitude of the situation becoming clear. They weren't just being asked to fight alongside these aliens, they were being asked to teach an entire galactic civilization how to wage war. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked. "An exchange," Kethare replied. "We offer humanity full membership in the Galactic Council, access to our advanced technologies, and the friendship of 47 peaceful civilizations. In return, we ask for your military expertise and your assistance in organizing a resistance against the Dominion." General Morrison leaned forward. "What kind of military assistance? Are we talking about advisors, or do you want our fleets to join your war?" "Both," Kethare admitted. "We need human officers to train our people in military tactics. We need human engineers to help us design effective weapons. And, yes, we need human fleets to serve as the core of our resistance until our own forces can be properly prepared." Sarah felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. This wasn't something she could decide alone, it would require approval from the Global Defense Council and probably a vote by the United Nations. "I'll need to discuss this with my government," she said. "But I have to ask, why us? You said you've identified other military species. Why not ask them?" Kethare's wings dimmed slightly. "We have. The Brakare consider our request beneath their honor, they fight only for glory, not to protect others. The Volcaran orcs are difficult to communicate with. They seem more interested in fighting us than the Dominion." She paused, then continued. "But our research suggests that humans are unique. You are the only species we've found that has developed advanced military capabilities while retaining the capacity for mercy and protection of others. Your history shows that you fight fiercest when defending those who cannot defend themselves. Sarah felt a strange pride at that assessment, even though it came from a species that viewed warfare as a disease. There's something else you should know, Dr. Reyes interjected. Admiral, the dead worlds we've been finding in nearby systems, the mining operations with no life signs? Those are Dominion worlds, Kethare confirmed sadly. What you've discovered are the remnants of civilizations that refused to surrender. The Dominion's standard practice is complete elimination followed by resource extraction. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Those dead worlds could be Earth's future if the Dominion won this war. How long do we have to decide? Sarah asked. The Dominion is 6 months from Council space, Kethare replied. But, they're also expanding in other directions. Based on their current expansion pattern, they will reach this sector of the galaxy within 5 years. Sarah looked around the table at her staff. They were all thinking the same thing. This wasn't just about helping alien strangers. This was about survival. If the Dominion was systematically conquering the galaxy, Earth would eventually be in their path regardless of whether humanity got involved in the current conflict. I'll relay your proposal to Earth immediately, Sarah said. But, I should warn you, humans don't like being backed into corners. If we agree to this, we won't be half-hearted about it. Kethare's wings brightened to what Sarah was beginning to recognize as a hopeful pattern. Admiral, after spending 1,000 years trying to solve problems through peaceful negotiation, the Galactic Council is ready to learn from species that know how to fight. As the meeting concluded and the aliens prepared to return to their vessel, Sarah realized that everything was about to change. Humanity was being offered a place in a galactic community, but the price was teaching an entire civilization how to wage war. Looking out at the stars through Luna Station's observation windows, Sarah wondered if they were about to save the galaxy or damn it. But, with the Dominion advancing and no other options available, she knew they didn't really have a choice. Humanity was going to war among the stars. The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council had been going for 14 hours straight. President Maria Santos of the Global Defense Initiative sat at the head of the table, her eyes red from exhaustion but her mind sharp with the weight of the decision before them. Around her, the leaders of Earth's most powerful nations debated the future of humanity itself. We're talking about committing our entire species to an alien war, argued Premier Chen of the Pacific Coalition, his translator device rendering his Mandarin into perfect English for the global audience. A war involving civilizations we've never heard of, in territories we know nothing about. And, if we don't, countered Prime Minister Williams of the European Federation, this Dominion force will eventually reach our sector anyway. We've seen what they do to inhabited worlds. Do we really want to wait until they're at our doorstep? Admiral Chen, who had been present via holographic link from Luna Station, cleared her throat. Madam President, if I may. I've spent the last 3 days reviewing the intelligence data that Ambassador Kethare provided. The Dominion isn't just expanding randomly, they're following specific strategic patterns. They're systematically eliminating any species that might pose a future threat. She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's spiral arms. Red markers indicated Dominion-controlled territory, while blue showed the Galactic Council worlds. Based on their expansion pattern, they'll reach the outer edge of our local cluster in approximately 4 years, regardless of what happens to the Council. We can either fight them now, with allies and advance warning, or fight them later, alone and unprepared. President Santos studied the star chart carefully. As a former military commander herself, she understood the strategic implications better than most of the politicians around the table. What kind of commitment are they asking for? Asked Secretary General Nakamura of the Asian Prosperity Sphere. Full integration, Admiral Chen replied. They want human advisors embedded with their command structure, human engineers helping design their weapons, and human fleet units serving as rapid response forces while they train their own people. And, in return, asked President Santos. Everything, Admiral Chen said simply. Access to technologies that are centuries ahead of our current capabilities. faster-than-light communication systems, energy sources that could power our entire planet for thousands of years, medical advances that could extend human lifespan indefinitely. They're offering us the keys to a galactic civilization. Minister Okafor of the African Union leaned forward. But, at what cost? We're talking about turning our entire species into soldiers for hire. No, Admiral Chen corrected. We're talking about becoming teachers. The council species have forgotten how to fight, but they haven't forgotten how to think. Once we show them the principles of warfare, they'll adapt faster than we can imagine. Dr. Elizabeth Reyes, who had been invited to provide scientific perspective, raised her hand. If I may, there's something else to consider. The Galactic Council represents the accumulated knowledge of 47 spacefaring civilizations. The scientific advances we could make through cooperation with them would accelerate human development by millennia. Assuming we survive the war, Premier Chen pointed out grimly. President Santos had been quiet for most of the debate, weighing the impossible choice before them. Finally, she spoke. Admiral, what's your honest assessment of our chances if we agree to help them? Admiral Chen paused, clearly considering her words carefully. Madam President, the Dominion has superior numbers and more combat experience. But they've been fighting pacifists for decades. They've never faced an enemy that understands warfare as an art form. Elaborate. Every engagement the Council has fought has been defensive, reactive. They wait for attacks and try to minimize damage. But humans understand offensive strategy, combined arms tactics, psychological warfare. We know how to take initiative, how to make enemies fight on our terms. She manipulated the holographic display to show detailed combat analyses. More importantly, the Council species have industrial capabilities that dwarf our own. If we can teach them to convert those resources into effective military hardware, we could field fleets that would make the Dominion think twice about their expansion. President Santos looked around the table at the faces of Earth's leaders. The decision would affect every person on the planet, and, potentially every human who would ever live. There's another factor, said General Morrison, Admiral Chen's strategic advisor. The moral component. We've spent centuries trying to move beyond our violent nature, trying to become a more peaceful species. This offer forces us to confront a fundamental question about who we are. Which is, asked Minister Williams. Are we a species that has evolved past the need for warfare, or are we a species that has simply been lucky enough to avoid external threats? The Dominion's existence suggests that somewhere in the galaxy, there are civilizations that will never choose peace. The question is, what do we do about that? The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the philosophical implications. Humanity had always assumed that as civilizations advanced, they would naturally become more peaceful. The existence of the Dominion challenged that fundamental belief. President Santos made her decision. I'm calling for a preliminary vote. All in favor of entering negotiations with the Galactic Council? 8 hands rose around the table. 2 remained down. All opposed? The 2 holdouts, Premier Chen and Secretary General Nakamura, raised their hands. The motion carries, President Santos announced. Admiral Chen, inform Ambassador Kethare that Earth is prepared to discuss terms. But, make it clear that any agreement must be ratified by the full Global Assembly. Admiral Chen nodded. Understood, Madam President. Should I begin preliminary planning for military integration? Yes. But, carefully. I want detailed assessments of what we're committing to before we sign anything. 3 days later, Admiral Chen found herself aboard the alien vessel Harmony's Echo, humanity's first official diplomatic mission to an extraterrestrial civilization. The interior of the ship was as beautiful as its exterior, corridors that flowed like crystal and rivers, chambers that seemed to grow rather than being built. Ambassador Kethare had provided her with a breathing apparatus that allowed her to survive in the ship's atmosphere, and the low gravity made movements surprisingly graceful. But what struck Chen most was the complete absence of anything that looked military. Your ship has no weapons, she observed as Kethare guided her through the corridors. Why would it? Kethare replied, her translation device conveying what sounded like genuine confusion.
This is a diplomatic vessel. But, you're in a war zone. What if you were attacked?
Then, we would attempt to communicate with our attackers and find a peaceful resolution.
Chen stopped walking. And if communication failed? Kethare's wings dimmed with what Chen had learned was embarrassment. Then, we would probably die.
This is why we need your help, Admiral. The concept of preparing for violence is so alien to us that we struggle to even imagine it. They entered what appeared to be the ship's command center, though it looked more like an art gallery than a military facility.
Holographic displays showed beautiful three-dimensional maps of local space, with gentle music playing in the background. This is our tactical display, Kethare explained.
Though I suppose tactical is not the right word, since we've never used it for combat planning.
Chen studied the display.
Despite its artistic presentation, the information was remarkably detailed. Ship positions, energy signatures, gravitational anomalies, everything was there, just presented in a way that emphasized beauty over utility.
Your sensors are incredibly advanced, she noted.
You can track individual ships across multiple light years.
Yes. We use this system for coordinating cultural exchanges and scientific expeditions. Never for tracking enemies.
Chen felt a growing appreciation for the challenge ahead. These beings had technologies that were generations ahead of humanity, but they had never thought to use them for warfare. It would be like teaching artists how to forge weapons with the finest materials in the galaxy.
Show me your industrial capabilities, she requested.
Kethare manipulated the display, and Chen's breath caught in her throat. The scale was staggering: manufacturing facilities that could produce starships by the hundreds, resource extraction operations that span entire asteroid belts, energy collection systems that could harness the full output of stars.
How many ships could you build if you converted this to military production? Chen asked. Ships? How many ships do you think we would need?
Chen did rapid calculations in her head.
Against the Dominion? Thousands. Tens of thousands. Kethare's wings fluttered with what Chen recognized as shock.
Admiral, we currently maintain a total of 300 vessels for our entire civilization. The concept of needing thousands of warships is difficult to comprehend. That's because you've been thinking like pacifists, Chen replied.
In warfare, numbers matter. Quality matters too, but if you can achieve both quantity and quality.
She smiled grimly.
Let me show you some human military doctrine. Over the next several hours, Chen began humanity's first lesson in teaching warfare to a galactic civilization.
Using the ship's advanced holographic systems, she demonstrated human tactical concepts: combined arms, force multiplication, strategic deception. Kethare was joined by other council representatives via faster-than-light communication, and Chen found herself addressing an audience of dozens of alien species simultaneously. It was surreal, giving a lecture on military strategy to beings who had never experienced conflict.
The key principle, Chen explained, is that warfare is about imposing your will on the enemy. You can't do that by simply defending your territory.
You have to take initiative, force them to react to your moves instead of making your own moves in response to theirs. A voice came through the translation system, one of the Luminian Council members. But, Admiral, this implies a level of aggression that our species have evolved past.
How can we maintain our moral integrity while engaging in such violent thinking?
Chen paused, considering her answer carefully. This was the heart of the philosophical challenge they all faced. In human experience, she said finally, there's a difference between violence for its own sake and violence to protect others.
When peaceful beings are threatened by those who choose aggression, fighting back isn't just acceptable, it's a moral obligation.
But, how do we ensure that learning warfare doesn't corrupt our civilizations? Asked another voice, this one from a Verdian representative.
How do we prevent ourselves from becoming like the Dominion? That's the most important question you can ask, Chen replied. The moment you stop asking it is the moment you've lost your way. Human military doctrine includes strict codes of conduct, rules of engagement, protection of non-combatants.
We can teach you how to fight effectively while maintaining your moral standards. She manipulated the holographic display to show historical examples of human warfare, carefully selected to demonstrate both tactical brilliance and ethical conduct.
The goal isn't to become monsters. The goal is to be so effective at warfare that your enemies choose not to fight you at all. Commander Thalam's rumbling voice came through the system. And, you believe this is possible? That we can become militarily powerful enough to deter the Dominion?
I know it is, Chen replied confidently. Your industrial capacity is hundreds of times larger than theirs.
Your technology is more advanced.
The only advantage they have is experience and the willingness to use violence. We can teach you to match their experience, and we can help you find the courage to defend your people. The conversation continued for hours as Chen outlined the basics of military organization, logistics, and strategy. The council representatives asked questions that revealed both their innocence about warfare and their remarkable intelligence. As the session concluded, Kethare approached Chen privately.
Admiral, I must ask, are humans truly willing to commit to this path? What we're discussing will transform our entire civilization. But it will also transform yours.
Chen looked out through the ship's transparent hull at the stars beyond.
Somewhere out there, entire worlds were being stripped of life by an enemy that viewed peace as weakness. Ambassador, humanity has spent its entire history learning hard lessons about the price of freedom.
Sometimes, good people have to do terrible things to protect what they love. We understand that better than most species, and we're willing to teach what we've learned.
And, after the war? Assuming we survive it? Chen smiled.
Then, we'll help you forget how to fight, if that's what you choose. But, we'll also make sure you never forget how, just in case. As Chen prepared to return to her ship, she realized that humanity was about to embark on the greatest teaching mission in history. They would show 47 peaceful civilizations how to wage war effectively while maintaining their souls. It would be the ultimate test of whether violence could truly serve the cause of peace. The first human military advisors departed for Council space within a week, beginning a transformation that would reshape the galaxy. Earth's greatest warriors were about to become the galaxy's greatest teachers, and the universe would never be the same. Behind them, Earth's shipyards worked around the clock, preparing fleets that would soon carry human courage to battles among the stars.